Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome back to the lab, your weekly source for the rundown of all things Indoor Football League. Whether you're looking for the recap of the week that was, the forecast of the week that is to come, or any other of the great goings on in the IFL, I'm pleased to announce that you have come to the right place. It is just past 9 p.m. over here on the East Coast, which means that once again, it is Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for tuning in, taking some time out of your busy schedule to check out the exciting action that we have ahead of us. Oddly enough, in 10 days' time, but we'll get to that momentarily. For those of you who are new to the league or this channel or the Sports Coast to Coast Forum in general, I want to happily welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game, a passion that I have channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14-member teams. Each week, we bring you up-to-date team rosters, game previews, game recaps, bunch of other hot takes in there as well. If you call yourself a fan of the Indoor Football League, Sports Coast to Coast, got to be your number one destination for your data download on all things IFL. So I've put the URL below in the description, so you can go ahead and check that out. It is there where you will also find the written version of my Wager Wednesday post as well, which has a poll this time. So definitely check it out if you would like. So on to our presentation piece here. We've made it, folks. 21 weeks in the books. We've whittled down a 14-team field into a 2-team matchup for the right to be crowned IFL national champions. So this episode, basically the streaming season finale, is going to look at basically every piece of this big game that it truly deserves. So I'm really excited to get into this today. So last week we had 2 games. We had the Western Conference Final and the Eastern Conference Final. At the risk of sounding like I'm selling out, these 2 games alone are well worth the $10 playoff package to get full access to these games. Live, on demand, the ability to clip, do whatever you got to do, because there was no shortage in action to either of these games. Both of them of which were determined by less than a possession. So you want to talk about the margin of error getting smaller and smaller? These 2 games exemplified that basically in full. So we'll recap each one of them, draw them out in a little bit more detail, kind of relive them, if you will. Once we do that, we'll take a look at how our results have stacked up so far this season in terms of our predictions. With just 1 game to go, now is a good time to kind of reflect on what our preseason goals were. How did we do? So we'll revisit those in advance of predicting the 2025 IFL National Championship, which is not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, August 23rd, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. This will not be on IFL Network. It'll be streamed exclusively on the CBS Sports family of networks. So whether you've got regular cable TV, a streaming device of some kind, be it Fire Stick, Roku, whatever, or you could just go directly on the website, type in cbssports.com, the day of the championship. You should be sure to find it there. So those are the methods of watching the game, other than, of course, purchasing tickets and seeing the game firsthand yourself. But in any event, that's when the game's taking place. And because I'm a crazy person, I ran a simulation of this game 1,000 times based on the same model that has guided our predictions throughout the totality of not just this season, but the entire series dating back to 2023. So we'll look at that, talk about each bet type, and discuss what my favorite pick is and which pick I'm ultimately going with. Bear in mind, the two may not be the same. So, last week began Friday night at Lee's Family Forum in Henderson. This was one of the more discussed storylines, I will say, leading up to conference championship weekend. The San Diego Strike Force, as the number 3 seed, technically made the host against the number 4 seed Vegas Nighthawks, but because of procurement issues regarding Front Wave Arena, the league and the teams arranged to have the game played on Friday night at Lee's Family Forum. So an unprecedented circumstance whereby Vegas, as the 4th seed, effectively got to host this game. What a delight it was. We started this one out with a field goal from Vegas, and then basically went back and forth, trading 1 or 2 play touchdown drives. It was the over-better's dream in the first half. The biggest separation, the first ounce of separation that either team got in this game, came late in the second quarter when Nate Davis scrambled, fumbled the football, ended up being recovered by Vegas. They would go on to score a touchdown on that subsequent drive right before the first half ended, put them ahead by 10 at the half. But San Diego, good Lord, man, resilient as they are, trying to play a game on 3 days rest with travel, they went on a run here. They started the second half, in fact, on a 16-0 run, which gave them the lead right back. And after a couple more touchdown-for-touchdown trades, San Diego finally got its defensive stand with about 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, which gave them the ball back with a 4-point lead and an opportunity to essentially put the game away. Unfortunately for those out in San Diego, Nate Davis couldn't complete a pass in that drive. 3 straight incompletions resulted in a turnover on downs. The Nighthawks capitalized on that new life, retook the lead, and at a couple different points with 1 minute left in the fourth quarter, San Diego got the lead, then Vegas got the lead. So with time winding down, it all came down to an Ernesto Lacayo field goal attempt from 36 yards to extend the game, and true to form, Lacayo booted it right through. So it shouldn't surprise anybody if he sneaks into first or second team all IFL honors at the kicker position. But a high pressure kick like that, hard to argue against it. So Lacayo's heroics extends the game. Game goes into overtime. Very rare occurrence in the IFL with the playoff game going into overtime. I believe the last time we saw it was actually 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, which was the game between Quad City and Massachusetts, which the Steamwheelers won in Worcester. But fast forward to present, or a couple days in the past, depending on how you look at it. San Diego starts with the ball first in overtime, goes 4 and out again. Vegas playing some smothering defense, especially on 3rd and 4th down on that drive. And now, suddenly, the Nighthawks were in walk-off position. And it ended up being Jerome Johnson, who has been relegated this year to a more like designed run type of quarterback in Vegas's 2 QB system. But he pushed on across the goal line, cementing Vegas's spot in the IFL National Championship game. Maybe a year too late, depending on how you look at it, but nonetheless, they'll have the opportunity to play for a championship in their 4th year as a franchise. They get by a pesky Strike Force team, 74-68 the final. And with that result, the Nighthawks just had to sit back, celebrate, and await the winner of the Eastern Conference Final between the Green Bay Blizzard and the Quad City Steamwheelers. And good gravy, did this game pick up exactly where Friday night left off in terms of point scoring. We had touchdowns. We had deuces. In fact, we didn't have a defensive stop in this game until the fourth quarter. pretty deep into the fourth quarter, I will say. But the Blizzard ended up getting out ahead right from the jump. Kickoff return for a touchdown by Jazaric Peterson with a subsequent deuce by Andrew Mevis, which kind of gave the Blizzard the shoulder length advantage right there and then. Quad City, to their credit, kept up toe-to-toe with them the entire way, just looking for multiple quarters to finally get that defensive stand that they needed. But they ended up having a brutal play go against them. With about 6-7 minutes to go in the quarter, they found themselves down by, I believe it was 4 points. With the ensuing kickoff to come, they were going to receive. The only problem was Andrew Mevis's kickoff went off the bottom of the crossbar, down into the field of play, takes a hop. Next thing you know, a pile of Blizzard players are on the football to steal that possession away. So the Blizzard capitalize on that. They get a touchdown. They put themselves ahead by 11 points. The Steamwheelers respond quickly with a one-play touchdown drive to put themselves back within 4. And then that's where they finally got the stand. The following Green Bay drive went a little bit backwards. Mevis's field goal attempt from 56 yards was no good. Did make it past the end zone, though, so the Steamwheelers started from the 5-yard line, where they were tasked with a 45-yard march to a potential ticket in the IFL championship. It looked for a moment like they were going to get it. Second play of that series, Daquan Neal throws a ball to Jordan Vesey. He jumps over the wall to go get it. It's ruled a catch, but a holding call on the Steamwheelers. One of the guys along the offensive line flagged for the infraction, which took place in the end zone, turning what should have been a first down into a safety and 2 points for the Blizzard. The ensuing onside kick attempt was unsuccessful. Green Bay ran a couple positive plays to extinguish the remainder of the clock, and that is how the Eastern Conference final ended. Green Bay gets redemption after last year's heartbreak. They will meet the Nighthawks in Tucson by way of this 71-64 win over the Quad City Steamwheelers. So for a fourth consecutive season, the IFL National Championship, at least in its current form, will have 2 different participants, as neither Vegas nor Green Bay had made it to this stage before. So from the objective sense, that was the insane action that was on last Friday and Saturday. We had picked Vegas on the money line. Perhaps fittingly enough, that was the bigger sweat of the two, whereas our over pick on Green Bay and Quad City nailed the over at 93.5 with ease. As a matter of fact, both of these games that we had of league historic significance. The Vegas-San Diego game ended up as the highest scoring playoff game in the league's 17-year history, whereas Green Bay and Quad City finished third in that category, while subsequently making that game the largest scoring playoff game in IFL history to end in 60 minutes, as the other 2 games above that game, both required overtime to pull off. So that's a snapshot of the action that was last week. Our table below with our year-to-date results looks really solid. I will say, of the Moneyline favorite betting, not too shabby after starting out 0-7 or whatever it was. So getting back to a little bit more normalcy in that stretch from the time that we got our first win in that bet type. Whereas everywhere else, we are at least 500 or better. Our over-under betting pretty much fueled this season. We were incredibly sharp with picks here, predicting correctly 64% of the time, which is absurd in any long-term betting venture. But regardless of the result that we have in this week's championship, we will have a convincing plus record. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it might be our best year by profitability overall in the series history. So very exciting times indeed. And here is our graph with results from both the past 4 weeks and the full season. And you look from week 18 onwards, we've just caught fire. We did basically the same exact thing last year. But in our past 20 picks, we are 15-5. So I could swear back in week 18 that we had talked about, you know what, if we want to get back up to our preseason goal, it's probably going to take a pretty insane stretch. Well, fast forward 4 weeks later, we got exactly that stretch that we were looking for. Just incredible how that developed. So I'm very happy about it. We're currently at over 7 units, barely, on the flat method. Just a shade under 2 units of net gain on the weighted method. But at least for the flat method, we will have ensured at least the 6-unit rate of return that we had set our sights on at the beginning of the season. So again, super thrilled with this result. And the same graph by ROI percentage essentially tells the same story in a bit of a different way. Even with the loss here, I still think we'd be operating at like 5.02 or 5.03 by my calculations on the flat method. But regardless, we're plus either way. So whether we win or lose, of course we want to win. But if we happen to drop this one, then you know what? Not a problem. We ended up doing what we wanted to do. So our results from last week, Vegas and San Diego. We had Vegas, the better spread team of the two, getting both the win and the cover. Significant to anybody that had the minus 3.5 in that game, that it did wind up reaching overtime. Because had Lacayo missed that field goal attempt to give the Nighthawks the win, that would have been just a 3-point margin of victory. That wouldn't have been enough. Your only path in a warped way was for that field goal to go through and for Vegas to win the game by a touchdown, whether it be 6, 7, or 8 points, whatever the case is. Green Bay, Quad City. Quad City tried hard like they could, but ultimately could not get the win or the cover. Green Bay getting the job done. Shouldn't take a genius to tell you, both games went over. Relatively unsurprising considering that the games combined for 277 total points, which even by indoor football standards is crazily unheard of. So we'll definitely be looking back at these trends when we dissect more of the Nighthawks Blizzard matchup coming up. But these are how last week's games factor into the season-long trends overall. Here's our results so far for the lifetime of the Wager Wednesday series. Our playoff form really stands out. Combining the past 2 postseasons, our bets have gone a ridiculous 11-2. A win on next Saturday night will match us with the 6-1 that we had pulled off in the 2024 postseason tournament. And I believe it would wind up giving us roughly more, depending on pick, of course, it would give us some larger profit margin than 2024. But again, we'll have to see what my pick is and how it ultimately shakes out. We are just shy of 200 wins overall on the series. We're probably going to have to wait until week 1 or week 2 next season to get to that milestone. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But, you know, these are amazing results. You know, we've basically averaged across each of the 3 seasons plus 6 units across the board, if not more. Again, certainly, we've got an opportunity to add a nice number to that with a solid pick in this game. But overall, the results here speak for themselves. Like the model, it's required a lot of refining, a lot of thinking through, critical thinking, but we've gotten it to a spot where it has shown its value in spades. Very happy about that. All righty, time for the weekly disclaimers here. The lines and odds tonight are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook, as they have been for practically the majority of the series. I know a couple times we had used Bet365, which, as I looked, ironically does not offer IFL games anymore from what I saw. So not exactly sure what happened there, but in any event, DraftKings has the game. So if you want to put a little bit of skin in the game, that's where you'll want to go. The series is purely for curiosity, for entertainment, and for fun. I am not a betting expert, so-called, and I did not create this series for the purpose of making money. This is just a guy highly inclined in mathematics, trying to see if there's any value that can be extracted from these matchups based on what the numbers say and what their stories tell. We've seen in sports, basically since the dawn of time, there's no such thing as a lock or a guarantee in the sports wagering world. Anything and everything can happen if you allow it the chance to be played on the field, the turf, the ice surface, what have you. That said, if you would like to tail or fade my selections, you're more than welcome to do so, but please gamble responsibly. I implore you, practice safe gaming habits, which includes setting a budget in terms of both time and money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one maybe is struggling with problem gaming or maybe gravitating more towards that addiction, please know that there are a lot of resources that you can refer to online or, handed out by the states for help in that area. HaveAGamePlan.org is one example. ResponsiblePlay.org is another. Both of which are great tools that help debunk gaming myths, knock down some of the stereotypes surrounding gambling, and just offer a wealth of awesome resources to kind of get you back to the straight and narrow. So yeah, those are some resources there. And with that, let's go in and talk about the IFL National Championship Game 2025 version. Here we go. We've got our Western champion, the Vegas Nighthawks. We've got our Eastern champion, the Green Bay Blizzard. This one projects to be super close. Bear in mind that this game is in Tucson, so neutral site. So Vegas favored by 1.5. The over-under, 99.5. On the money line, Vegas, minus 130. And Green Bay is plus a dime. Chris coming in here is saying exactly what I said before. Not a get-rich-quick scheme. Absolutely right. This is just for fun. Make some picks, see if we're right. If we are, great. If we're not, hey, we're surprised. All right, so before I get into any of the team-based trends here, let's talk about the current state of affairs for each team's rosters. We'll start with the technical visiting team here in Vegas, who's had quite a unique season, in all honesty. They came into the season with the reigning IFL MVP, Jerome Johnson, obviously etched in stone as a starting quarterback to begin the season. However, Johnson had some early struggles with turnovers, ultimately wound up getting hurt. Enter rookie sensation, Jayden de Laura, who has had, in my mind, a criminally underrated season in guiding the Nighthawks to where they are today, preparing for this game. The former Arizona Wildcat, I believe he played at either Washington or Washington State as well, one of those two schools up in the Pacific Northwest. But he's proven that he belongs in this league and perhaps a higher up league. The most impressive thing about de Laura, in my mind, has been his insane ability to take care of the football. Basically, throughout the full season, including postseason, he's thrown just 3 interceptions, 1 or 2 of which weren't even his fault. And he only has, I think, 1 or 2 lost fumbles to his name. So you're talking about basically 16, 18 games, however you want to look at it. 5 turnovers. That's it. I can count them with one hand. And Chris chiming in and saying Washington was the other school that Delora attended. Thank you for providing me some guidance on that. But yeah, it's been an incredible season, right at the signal caller for Vegas, eventually getting to a situation where they found themselves comfortable using both quarterbacks in certain situations, with Delora operating as the primary pure pocket passer and Johnson coming in short yardage and goal-to-go situations with the X factor of having that arm as well. Though recently he has had some struggles completing passes. But in any event, however they got there, Vegas, the second best team in the IFL in point scoring per game. The supporting cast is highlighted by running back Antonio Wimbush, 700-yard season at the running back position. Quentin Randolph, who is going to be a shoo-in as an all-IFL first-team wide receiver, one of just 2 players to crack the 1,000-yard milestone on the season. He is the alpha dog, supported by guys like C.J. Jefferson, C.J. Wyndham Jr., and Mike Kerrigan. So that offense, they may have some structural flaws, I guess you could call. Maybe they didn't get to the point that they got that, some experts were thinking, but they've been great. Otherwise, they would not be in this spot. So that's a look at their offense. The defense for the Nighthawks, very, very good unit. Ended up being second in points allowed per game, on top of being the second best offense in the IFL. A large reason for that, really, really beefed up defensive line that knows how to get to the quarterback. Claude Davis leading the way with 6 sacks. Maurice Jackson and Lorando Hernandez right alongside him with 4 sacks apiece. A youngster in Chiziu Manakwe playing some really solid linebacker at the most critical time of the season for Vegas. And then that ball-hawking backfield, full pun intended, where you've got guys like Darius Williams, James Caesar, Mikel Calhoun. Point being, it is tough to score points against this Vegas team. I know they got hung for 68 last week, but you know what? They ended up winning the game. So take that for what it's worth. Their kicker is Ben Derby, in a spot where Vegas might be a little bit lacking on the season, as the Nighthawks have only hit 3 field goals total on the season. So it is a rather touchdown or bust type of offense. But you know what? As the second best offense, we've seen a lot more touchdowns than busts. So you know what? You can get away with it as long as you're efficient, which Vegas, unlike many other teams in the IFL, definitely do have that designation rightfully earned. So that's a little bit of a look at Vegas. Now let's discuss Green Bay. Where it all starts with Green Bay is the very likely candidate for IFL MVP, quarterback Max Myler. 86 total touchdowns on the season, 60 through the air, 26 on the ground. He can hurt you in a myriad of different ways. The skill was already there. We had seen him play for the better parts of 2 seasons already under center for the Blizzard. But this was definitely that 3rd-year breakout that I'm not sure a whole lot of folks outside of Green Bay saw coming, to be honest. We knew he was good, but man, that ceiling that we saw was unbelievable. So terrific job by Max back there. His supporting cast, a couple of good running backs, Jalen Cagle and Kamani Clark, both of whom average over 4 yards per carry on the season. You also have a wide receiver core that's led by TJ Davis, who doubles as the backup quarterback, along with team vets like Lowell Patron Jr., as well as Andre Williams, splitting up wide receiver duties as well. So it's another strong supporting cast, and it is the only offense in the IFL to have actually exceeded Vegas's mark on the season. So I think 52.6 was what Green Bay averaged on a per game basis. And in their 2 playoff wins, they cruised right by those totals each and every time, with 58 against Tulsa and 71 against the Quad City Steamwheelers. And Chris chiming in again, Milo took a couple steps up this season. I would say so. I'd say that's the least that you could say about the positivity that Max Myler has brought to this offense and to the league as a whole. One of the more curious things about the Blizzard, the more I looked into this, is their defense. Because they do have some really good trademark names up there. Despite being, for all intents and purposes, a bottom 5 team in the IFL in defensive points allowed per game. I think they ended up finishing 12th during the regular season in points allowed per game. I think the number was 45.7, something close to 46. But for sure, the earlier part of the season was definitely more of a struggle than the later part. So we did see some progression there. The personnel that they have along the defensive line, you've got 3 really good guys manning the line of scrimmage. You got Tremont Lofton, who 3 years ago was a Northern Arizona Wrangler when the folks in Prescott Valley won the title against Quad City. You've also got Sean Mustin, Rafiq Abdul-Wahid, who have spent multiple seasons with the Green Bay Blizzard. Andre White should be the starting linebacker for this game. And along the defensive secondary, pretty much led by Nigel Canada, but you also got guys like Cale Jackson Jr., Mamadou Mbai, and Kevin Ransom, all making plays as well throughout not just the postseason, but the entire 25 season in totality. So a good defense that can pop off at any given time. We've seen it firsthand in the playoffs, allowing the Oilers to score just 26 points while turning them over 5 times. So if they can dial into that idea of taking the ball away from Vegas, which has been a strength for them, the Blizzard could find themselves in really fine shape for this game. Last but not least, along the kicker front, Andrew Mevis might be first IFL all-team kicker this year. And that's despite missing a couple games midway through the season, while Mevis had earned an opportunity to be with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the CFL. So got a brief cup of coffee up there, and then wound up coming back to Green Bay after he was released. But nonetheless, he's a field goal threat at any point on the field. He's a deuce threat. He's nailed drop kicks. Exactly the type of championship caliber kicker that you want in a game like this. So there you have it. That's some of the roster discussion for Vegas, some roster discussion for Green Bay. Let's talk about the big board here and figure out what our pick is. And I'm going to start bet type by bet type with what I ultimately did not select. And my first order of business here is to talk about this number for the implied total, 99.5. This is high. Even by these teams' offensive standards, this is up there. In fact, in a save the best for last type of moment, this game will stand as the highest implied total all season long. The next closest by comparison, 96.5, which was Green Bay against Arizona on week 15, a matchup where the Blizzard offense had a down game. Arizona won 48-28, and the game ended 3 touchdowns below the mark. I'm telling you guys right now, I so badly want to take the under in this game, simply because the data is just screaming at me to do so. I can't really bring myself to do it, though. Reason number one, do I want to be that guy? As stupid of a reason as it sounds, do I want to be that guy who picks the under in the league's finest stage? because the data supports it too. Like, we've only had, I think, 25% of games maybe on the season in full end up reaching this mark. A little less than half of which were games involving either Vegas or Green Bay. But really, all it's going to take for any sort of over bet here to kind of fall in life support is one drive that lasts like 6, 7, 8 minutes that either turns over on downs or manages just a field goal. You need a lot of possessions here. And maybe we have situations where we don't get a whole lot of possessions offered by either team. The other thing, too, is to kind of put yourself in the shoes of both head coaches, right? You got Corey Roberson on Green Bay. You got Mike Davis on Vegas. Above all else, they'll want to make sure that the other offense is not lighting them up for 50-plus points in this game. The conference championship week was crazy. It was all sorts of fun for fans, but maybe not for head coaches / defensive coordinators. So with basically 2 full weeks of rest, film, study, and prep, I would fully expect the defenses to come up with at least 1 or 2 big plays in this game in the form of takeaways, I would suspect. But then again, the over 99.5, if you wanted to go bold, certainly not a bad play either. After all, we are talking about the two best offenses, both by points per game and points per 10 possessions in the IFL. So if you add them all up, ignore the effects of defense, you're basically at 100, 101 points that are projected. So, like I said, it is super close. You do need a lot to happen. But if this game somehow takes the game script of the conference finals, certainly no reason why it can't cash again. But my heavy lean is towards the under, but I'm not pulling the trigger here, even though I do love it. The money line, I think you know I think you all know where I'm going with this. I'm not bothering with the money line. Though I will say plus a dime on Green Bay represents some pretty solid value. Kind of goes back to that whole thing that we were saying before of any time where you have an evenly matched up situation like this, ultimately long term, the more that you play the underdogs on these, the more that you'll take back in terms of net profit once that stretch is all said and done. You might not win half your bets, but of the ones that you do, you're probably looking at like plus 110s, plus 130s, plus 150s to make up an offset for maybe that one extra favorite that happened to win when you pick the underdog. But you guys know how my money line betting has been this year, so I'm going to say no to that. Which brings me to spread betting. Is my pick laying the 1.5 on Vegas, or is it taking the 1.5 with the Green Bay Blizzard? My selection for the 2025 IFL National Championship game, Vegas minus 1.5. If the history of the IFL Championship game, at least in its current format, is any indication, the odds are going to be extremely stacked against the Eastern Conference representative. In fact, if you take a look back at league history as a whole, league hardware has only ever been east of the Mississippi one time in 16 or 17 seasons or whatever it was. That was back in 2021 when the Massachusetts Pirates defeated the Arizona Rattlers in an overtime game to claim what currently stands as the final United Bowl title. But since 2022, this game has been monopolized by the Western Conference. Northern Arizona beat Quad City 3 years ago. Bay Area beat Sioux Falls 2 years ago, and Arizona dished out some incredible revenge against the Pirates last season. Just something maybe about the traveling, the logistics, the time difference, whatever it is, has just seemed to favor the team coming out of the West. So that sort of recency history is my first reason along this pick. My second reason why I'm backing Vegas on the spread rather than just taking them on the money line is, in all practicality, the only way that we get screwed if Vegas wins is if they score by a single point. You know, at this point, let's show some gusto here. Lay the 1.5, especially considering where Vegas has been the league's best covering machine this season. 12-6 overall against the spread. During the regular season, they were one of just 3 teams in the entire league to finish with an above 500 record against the spread, both home and away. The only 2 other teams to do that were the top seeds in their respective conference. Bay Area in the West, Quad City in the East. Vegas, subsequently, also has 2 technical road covers throughout the postseason, running their total all the way up to 7 games covered in games where they're the road team. Even if you knock out last week's because it was at Lee's Family Forum, that 6 covers outside of home still paces the IFL as the league's highest mark in that category. And then my third and final reason for this pick is it kind of leans upon that per 10 possession efficiency that I mentioned earlier. Throughout the regular season, Vegas, their point differential in terms of offense minus defense per 10 possessions actually winds up being just under a field goal better than what Green Bay put in throughout this season. Again, a lot of it might be skewed by Green Bay's struggles on defense to start. But even at that, you can't dispute how good Vegas has been throughout this season. I think the setting is right for them. Heading into the playoffs, I viewed them as extremely underrated. Viewed them as a trendy team that could make it here if enough breaks went their way. Actually joked around a little bit on social media saying, Arizona lost their game against San Diego in the finale to avoid Vegas. Now we see why they might have wanted to avoid Vegas, because they were sneaky good. But I think this sets up as a situation where Vegas comes in, they get the job done. We just need a multi-point victory here to go through. So Vegas minus 1.5 is my call here. And we will see if we can end our 2025 campaign with another win to add to our pile of slips. So that is going to do it for the more analytical piece of tonight's show. I want to thank you all so much again for hopping on. But before we go, I do have one announcement that I do want to make. And that surrounds my contest that I am putting on this week. It is called King of the Turf 3. Yes, I've run this twice before, but this is a prediction competition completely free to enter, where if you accumulate enough points, you'll be walking home with a $200 grand prize. I've put a link to the form itself in the description. You can also scan the QR code over here on, let's see if I can do this right. There we go. Over there on the right-hand side of my screen, just scan that QR code. It'll take you right to the form to enter. Basically just a series of questions from the game's outcome in full to basically micro props in the middle of those games. So I'm excited to put this on. Hopefully it feels a little bit of foot traffic, if you will, some eyes onto this IFL National Championship, because this game needs to be hyped. For all intents and purposes, we've got the two best teams that this league has to offer, and we're going to get a spectacular game out in Tucson next Saturday night. So King of the Turf 3, go enter. It's absolutely free to enter. And we'll see if those predictions stack up when all is said and done. So on that note, we are going to wrap it up for this evening. Thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you're going to put some bets on the IFL Championship game, I wish you the very best of luck. And if all goes well, I'll see you at the cashier.